All right, we finally got to the spot that we wanted around St. Pete, and we called this the battle of the baits. I was going to use live bait, George was going to use artificials, and we're going to see if it's true that we could keep up with the artificials versus the live bait.
Well, I'll tell you, that morning we had one blow up. The first cast, I was using this Mirror Lures Skin Series, and I'm telling you, it's a Topwater lure. It's a top dog mullet style, and it's got this nice rattle in there, and that really attracts the fish. When you got a little bit of windy conditions, if it's not too bad, you can still run a larger Topwater, and that sound will attract the fish. And I think that's where in the beginning I started having an advantage. My very first cast, we had a redfish blow up. Unfortunately, it missed it, but after that, I think we caught 5 or 6 jacks on the Mirror Lure before we ever caught one on the live bait. So that just goes to show you, live bait is not always the best situation.
No, that's the truth. But now, I think too, one of the advantages that we had, you were using the Mirror Lure Skin Series. Well, one of the things that happened that morning was that we missed a lot of fish. I mean, you had a lot chasing that bait, but they weren't quite hitting it or they were missing it.
Yeah.
Versus where I wasn't getting any hits at all.
Yeah, and in the beginning, I think it's just, it's such a noisy lure. It causes a lot of commotion. The very first cast when we got to the dock, I had the snook, or excuse me, it was a redfish blow up, and it missed it. But a lot of times, because the redfish's mouth is geared downward, they miss a Topwater lure. But,
well, with redfish, even on live bait, it don't matter. You miss a lot if the bait's on the surface, because like you said, the eyes are on the top of the head, their mouth is way on the bottom. So basically, when they go to strike that lure or that bait, they're blind. They're going in the direction of where they saw the bait, but you're moving the artificial and the bait's moving. Now, George, if it wasn't the time of the year and the way the wind was, I think we would have probably tried for something different, but the weather dictated what we had to do today, and we were already on the water, getting ready to film.
Yeah.
So you picked the docks, we went out, tried to see what we could do. And one of the advantages you had over me is that Mirror Lure was a lot heavier than my little white bait that I was throwing.
Sure.
And you could get a lot more distance out of it.
Sure, you're covering a lot of ground with that lure. Even though it's a Topwater and it floats, it's actually, I believe, 5/8 of an ounce. So, I mean, you've got a lot of weight there. You can cover some ground, and it makes a lot of noise. So, the presentation is large on that lure right there.
Today's story revolves around downtown St. Petersburg. During the 1920s, that's when St. Pete really started to take off. 1924, the Gandy Bridge was open, and that made it an easier way to get across from the Tampa side into St. Pete, which was a lot of problems in the past. Then in the 1940s, the Coast Guard station in Bayboro Harbor became a training station for our troops for World War II. And it was so busy that all the hotels, everything was booked all those years. Then 1950 came along, air conditioning started to become kind of a standard thing in a lot of the places, and it started bringing down the tourists and the northerners to move down into St. Pete. From then on, it's kind of like history. We had the pier, we had the Dowling Museum, they kept adding more museums. Now in 2020, they opened up the new pier that replaced the old inverted pyramid pier. And now St. Petersburg is a hub for all generations, from the young to the old, has a lot of draw, a lot of stuff. And we decided what an ideal time to do a show that revolves around downtown St. Pete.
The presentation is large on that lure right there.
And I mean, I think it took like, you caught 4 or 5 jacks before I even got my first strike.
Yeah.
With live bait.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you, I think you were covering more territory. You were making more of a ruckus on the water.
Louder presentation, yeah.
And that was drawing the attention of the jacks, where my bait was just kind of doing its thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really attracting the fish. It took a while for me to even start catching a few fish.
It was amazing, and it really shows the power sometimes of an artificial can be better than a live bait. And Mirror Lures just done such a great job with all of their lures. They're always advancing and doing new things. And the series we were using was called the Skin Series with the sea eyes. And the eyes on these lures, you know, they look realistic. The sound is really good. So you almost can't beat it. And now with the Skin Series, they've actually made it look like the live baits that we're throwing usually.
So if you're working it, you've already got the presentation, you know how to work that lure a little bit. You've got it, it mimics perfect a live bait.
Oh yeah.
But the big advantage, I think, is you're covering more territory and more distance because you can cast it further. And if you think about it, on certain days, especially windy conditions, it's hard to throw a live bait.
Yeah, especially if they're smaller. You know?
If they're smaller. So what you were doing, it was perfect. You had that heavier lure, and I was using the lightweight little greenback.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you started catching more. There was other fish in the area, but I think that when the jacks moved in, they kind of eliminated the bite for the other species. But considering the weather,
yeah, and it's hard to leave a good, you know, a lot of people frown on the jack crevalles, but it's hard to leave. I mean, there must have been hundreds of them there, and we even switched lures. I mean, we changed our presentation. There was just so many of them. The action was so good. So how do you leave it? You know, I'm a fisherman. I love action.
And of course, what we're basically, the area that we were in, we had these docks, and then there was like a trench. Here again, we moved a little bit to the other side of the dock where that hole was that you were talking about,
yeah,
right, George?
Yeah, we were seeing, it's a drop off. There's a nice sand area with some grass flat in there. And then we were seeing some actual snook hits. So we moved over to see if we couldn't get some of the snook on the artificial. And unfortunately then some ladyfish and jacks moved over with us.
They weren't going to leave us alone that morning. They decided they were going to go everywhere we went.
There's a topwater strike right there on the lure, and I mean, it's just I enjoy watching a topwater strike. I don't know if there's anything that looks quite like it.
Well, it's visual, and they hit it harder, so you got a lot of components that makes it a little more exciting, you know.
And the jack crevalles, their strike on the top water is tremendous. I mean, the amount of boil, splash, and everything else, it's
And these weren't the real big ones, but hey, you get into some schools, they're 9-pounders. I mean,
yeah.
they pull like a freight train. That's another fish that, believe it or not, smoked is good to eat.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you're picking up a fish, Jack crevalle, if you squeeze the black dots on each side, like you see me doing here, it will paralyze them. They actually stop moving. It's something with their nerves. So if you squeeze the 2 black dots, that fish will stop wiggling around for you and it'll stay completely still to where you can control it very, very easily and be able to, get a hook out if you got to use, pliers or whatever. But a Jack crevalle is very strong. You'll see it'll be flopping all over the place. It's kind of a crazy fish almost. But as soon as you grab those black dots, it paralyzes them, and then you have easy control of it.
And that's the only thing that when you're using artificials like a mirror or something like that, because of the treble hook, you got to be careful with the fish, how you're going to handle it. Because a fish like that, he starts jumping around. All you need is to get one hook in your hand, and he pulls again, and it goes all the way in. So it just got to be good. That's why the D-hooker is so good.
And I like using the D-hooker. We got that from Lee Fisher, actually. Stainless steel, and they last a long time. They use a good stainless steel.
And see, finally, I finally started getting a few hits on the live bait.
Right.
But most of the hits for the first 30, 40 minutes was all on the artificials. I couldn't get them to strike a live bait to save myself. And all of a sudden, the pattern changed a little bit, and it started hitting some of the live bait. And I think that was a pretty good sized jack or ladyfish. I don't even remember now.
But you can see, even the birds are excited about the chum I'm throwing out, so it does. It causes a lot of commotion. It gets the bite going, especially when it slows down a little bit. Now, in the winter time, a couple of years ago, I had an area of the reef out there in St. Pete that I'd save about an hour at the end of my trip coming back in, and we had 10 to 15, 20 pounders hanging out at the reef. And after people would catch 1 or 2 of those,
that's it. They
were like, okay, let's go in. We don't want to catch any more of these. They're too much. But see there's the grab on the black dots, and that fish totally goes slack on you. It just paralyzes them, and then it doesn't hurt the fish whatsoever. It's just some nerves that paralyze it for a second. When you throw it back in the water, he'll take off good as new. Well, guys, on that episode, what we were throwing was the mirror lure. Now, this is a topwater lure. It's the skin series. It's got the sea eyes on it, which is a little different version. I mean, they've always been known for the large eyes on mirror lures. These are the clear version. And the skin series, basically, it's like they've taken a digital picture of a finger mullet and they've placed it over the lure. I mean, it can't look any more realistic than that. And what you want to do is you want to work this in a walk the dog motion, back and forth. And you can hear that little rattle on the inside. There's a ball in there that's making that noise. When you twitch this, you want to twitch it short twitches, but hard, so that rattle will make that real nice loud sound, and that really calls the fish in. And then what happens is, as this is walking back and forth, the sides are flipping up a little bit, catching the sunlight and flashing. So you'll have a flash and a nice loud sound while it's splashing on top of the water. So it looks like an injured finger mullet coming across the top of the water, maybe trying to get away or whatever, and that creates a really ferocious strike. The action was just really good. You know, we could have left and went and did something else, but the action was so good and we were having such a good time with it.
And I mean, the thing is, one of those days we were limited. With the way the wind was blowing, there's not a lot of places we could go to. So the possibility of probably getting some snook or reds were going to be kind of slim. We were doing good, having a good time, and hey, we went with the flow. And I tell you, look at the way those rods are bent.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's
they do good.
He's doing the death roll on us.
Yeah.
This is, you think you were fighting a tuna offshore. I mean, basically, that's doing the same kind of going around in circles. And I'm telling you, when people are fighting them, they do. They kind of cry uncle once in a while when you have clients on these things. And they get pretty big. I mean, Jack Crevalles get really...
And the bay in the winter, some of those schools that come in, I mean, they're up
15,
in the 9,
20
10,
pounders.
12, 15
Oh, yeah.
pounders, yeah. I mean, it's not unusual to get into a school of 9 to 10 pounders.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, they'll pull your guts out. 3 or 4 of those,
yeah,
they wear you out.
Yeah.
You've had enough.
Last year, beginning of the year last year, we had a school of the 10 to 12 pounders that were hanging out by the pier. And in the mornings, the tide was so low, so I was going to the pier with my clients. We were catching a handful of those, so they were like, okay. And then we would go do snook and redfish after that. And it gave me time for the tide to come in.
Move in. Great. That got hooked up. He was hooked up pretty good.
Yeah, he wasn't getting off easy. No. But as you can see, almost every jack, I'm grabbing the black dots. It just controls that fish really well. But for people that aren't used to fish, they want to get their picture, I use the fish grip all the time. It's an easy thing. It grabs the fish, it doesn't harm them, and it just lets a person that's not used to handling fish really have an easy time with it and get that picture they really want.
You got a nice picture where you're at.
So the action continued and actually picked up again for us. When we made our move, they were sitting on this little drop off right there, and literally every time our lure came across and it went from the shallow over the deep, we were getting hit.
We were getting a lot of hits.
Double hookups, left and right.
So I don't know what caused them to move, but all of a sudden, like you said, I think they went into the hole for some reason along the edge of that drop off. Maybe some grass minnows.
I was gonna say, maybe some bait came through and they were just following them.
And they were hanging right along the edge of that drop off.
And that could be the reason why the switch to the gold spoon, going a little bit deeper at that time, got me back into the bite. Because literally at this time, every cast we made, whether it was live bait, artificial, it didn't matter. I think you could have threw an empty hook out there and caught them. Where they were being finicky in the morning on the live bait, which is kind of funny. Now see how once I got a hold of the black dots, that fish just totally stopped moving. And like I said, don't copy me with grabbing the hook. I've got a lot of experience. You're safer using a D-hooker or pliers, especially with a treble hook.
We were 2 on at a time, non-stop there towards the end.
For quite a while. I mean, we had a good bite for about 40 minutes, I would say.
The outside. Okay, right here. All right, here we go, right here. Can you hear that? Yes, I hear you.
You say something?
Yeah.